We are so thrilled to have you here tonight, Evan. So please warmly welcome Evan Nierman to our bima. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. It is really a treat to be here tonight, so I want to thank you for the warm welcome. I feel a little awkward, frankly. Your president is sitting here. Typically, the big announcements come from Mr. Cass, but I'm the one who's going to make a big announcement tonight, and that is that Moses is officially canceled. And from now on, for good reason, for many good reasons, Temple Judea will not be talking about Moses, referencing Moses, teaching kids about Moses. And I think it's pretty clear. We as Reformed Jews know we live in a modern world and we have to apply modern standards. And therefore, we also pick and choose what parts of the tradition we want to embrace and continue with, and which ones have clearly passed their expiration date. And I think it stands to reason Moses is a figure from the past who isn't in step with our modern progressive values. In fact, the case against Moses is pretty simple. God tells him to speak to a rock. He hits it with his staff. He's a man of violence. God goes to a lot of trouble to bring Moses all the way up to Mount Sinai, to give him the 10 Commandments, the Torah. Moses comes down. He throws a hissy fit, a tantrum, and he destroys the Torah. And on top of that, if that weren't enough, Dayenu, he's a murderer. He killed an Egyptian. Okay? It's not right as Jews to embrace a man like that. And so I think it's high time that we resign him to the dustbin of history and we don't talk about Moses anymore. So it's a big announcement. I'm just going to let that sit for a moment because I know it's a big change. But I think we can all agree. And I'd like to thank Rabbi Siegel and Rabbi Fish for allowing me to make that announcement. It is what it is. We got to move forward. Obviously, that's not true. Moses is still okay. He's on our team. But every day, there are other historical figures, dead and alive, who the mob of people who believe that they have the power to determine who we recall fondly and who we're going to disparage posthumously or even while they're alive. This is happening every day. It's happening to people from history, and it's happening to people all around us. And there is a misperception around cancel culture, especially from the proponents. So just by a show of hands, is there anyone here who's never heard of cancel culture yet? Anyone? Okay. So no one is living under a rock. Everyone has heard this in the media, discussed, I understand, in Rabbi Fish's sermon last year, was it? Right here. So everyone knows what we're talking about. Now, what you may not know is it's not just the rich and the famous who are getting canceled. And proponents of cancel culture like to say, cancel culture is great because we're holding people to account. And these are people who are high and mighty, who think they're above the law. They think they're above reproach. And we're holding them to standards that we think they should be held to. And that's a good thing. We're empowering the people who are powerless in order to hold to account those who commit these transgressions with impunity. I would argue we don't really need cancel culture to hold people accountable. There's a range of things that don't just exist today, but they have always existed to hold people to account. If someone commits a transgression, you can call them out on it. You can protest. You could boycott. You could discuss it with them. There are all manners of things. If they've really committed a crime, you can report them. You could report them to HR departments. You can see that some sort of sanctions are brought against them. You can sue them. You can even press charges against them, and you can have them arrested and prosecuted if they've committed a crime. These are all different avenues of accountability that have existed and will continue to exist, and they hold people to account. We don't need to publicly shame people in the form of cancel culture attacks in order to hold people accountable. And the book that I wrote came about because I had the opportunity to speak with this woman named Lisa Alexander. And Lisa was minding her own business one day, out for a walk with her partner, and they stumbled upon a man who was writing on a wall outside of a home in San Francisco. She knew that he didn't own that house because she knew the person, because she'd lived in the neighborhood almost 20 years. So there's a guy she doesn't recognize. He's wearing a mask. He's writing on the wall of someone's home that she knows. So she approaches him and says, "Excuse me, pardon me, sir, what are you doing? You shouldn't be writing on other people's property." She thought she was doing a good thing. She thought she was being a responsible neighbor. But what happened was he spun around with the camera. He started videotaping her. And he said, "Why are you bothering me? What's the matter?" And he was writing with chalk. And he was writing the phrase, "Black Lives Matter." He was very aggressive toward her. And he said, he said, "How do you know this isn't my house?" And she said, "Because I know the person who lives here." He goes, "Oh yeah, really? Well, if you don't think I live here, why don't you call the cops?" And she said, "Well, I don't want to call the cops, but go ahead, call the cops." And he posted this video several days later, and it was a video of her, and he said, "This is Lisa. She's calling the cops, and this is why Black Lives Matter." Video, in short order, went viral. It was on all the news stations, not just in the Bay Area. It went national and international. And in short order, a mob of people came to Lisa's home because people doxed her. They took her personal information. They reacted. They thought they were doing a good thing. They were holding her accountable for being a racist, for being a Karen, for picking on this guy. He was a person of color. She was a privileged white woman. She was a business owner. A gang of people came to Lisa's house and they tried to kill her. Some of them had weapons. She was terrified. Within days, every vendor, every business partner with whom she had a relationship abandoned her. And most released public statements saying, "We condemn racism and we've broken all ties with her company." The company went out of business. The stress from everything that happened with Lisa took its toll. She was hospitalized. Her body went into shock. She shut down. Cancel culture didn't just kill her business. It almost killed her. When I heard Lisa's story, I was horrified, and I said, enough is enough. In my day job, I don't write books. I lead a team of people who do crisis communications and PR. We help people who need to get out of the media or people who want to get in. But in this case, I said, I need to take the time. I need to write about this topic because I don't think people understand the impact this is having on normal people's lives. And if we're going to defeat it, we first have to raise awareness around it. We have to define it, and then we have to defeat it. And so I wrote the book, The Cancel Culture Curse, because my hope is that we collectively can decide we're not going to go along with this anymore. And it's not a left wing, it's not a right wing. This is something that I believe should be embraced, ending cancel culture wherever you happen to fall on the political spectrum. I happen to believe it's fundamentally un-American to cancel people. We believe in things like free speech, due process, a presumption of innocence. But with cancel culture, those things are all obliterated. Before you even have the chance to defend yourself in an actual courtroom, you are charged, convicted, and sentenced to death in the court of public opinion. And that's wrong. It's fundamentally un-American. And I also believe that it is antithetical to what we believe as Jews. We're having this discussion today at the perfect time to talk about cancel culture. The Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Shabbat Teshuva, which some people translate as repentance, but technically it's a turning back, turning inward, turning away from the mistakes that we've made. But we believe as Jews that every single one of us is fallible. We do make mistakes, but we believe that God forgives us. And we believe that we have an opportunity during the high holy days to approach those against whom we've sinned, to ask them for forgiveness and to ask for forgiveness for God. The problem with cancel culture is there is no forgiveness. Every punishment becomes permanent. And I think our lives, we all know that at some point we've done something or said something that if we had to do it all over again, we would take it back. And we made a mistake. And typically it's by making mistakes that we learn, we grow, we become better versions of ourselves. And so as you think about cancel culture and the impact that it's having, I hope that one, you never find yourself in a situation where people are seeking to deplatform, to silence, to attack you. And I hope that you'll also similarly never participate in those kind of takedowns against others. I think it's a topic that we need to speak to our kids about. It's a form of bullying. There's a lot of talk about cyberbullying, and cancel culture certainly fits the bill. And I'll just tell you briefly, in my research for the book, I was able to discover a handful of elements. And I'm going to tell you what these elements are. And the next time you hear about a cancel culture situation or you hear someone taking heat in the media, I want you to think about this framework. It's really easy to remember. Condemn. C-A-N-D-E-M. If there's a situation, cancel culture erupts and it matches these 6 elements. You look for them. So the first, the C, is that the crime is committed against a collective. So if Rabbi Siegel and I get into an argument and someone captures it on video and it goes out into the world, it's not that I had an argument with her, it's I had an argument with a fill in the blank, a collective group, a woman, a rabbi, a Jew. So then it becomes, I'm an anti-Semite, I'm a misogynist. It's a collective. It's not just a conversation or an offense committed against another person. It's a collective. The A is that it arises and it accelerates really quickly. In the blink of an eye, that's how fast a story goes viral, spreads around, gets into the press, and goes everywhere. N, the nature of the offense on its face is either fabricated or it's actually pretty minor. And if you look at these situations, a lot of times it's someone who made a stupid post on social media, or they said the wrong thing, or they made a mistake, they had a bad moment. The D, it prompts a disproportionate response. With cancel culture, the mob goes straight for the most extreme. Fire that person. They should never be able to work again. He or she should not be teaching students. They should be expelled. It's always the most extreme and permanent. And then the E is that everyone is afraid to defend the accused, because no one wants the mob coming after them. And then the final element, the M, is the moral absolutism of the people doing the canceling. And far too often we see these instances where people under cover with the anonymity that the internet provides, posting things, hateful things, whether it's Twitter, X, Facebook, the social media platform doesn't matter, but it's people attacking other people. And so as we turn inward at this time of the year, we think about the words that we say, Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, the sin which we committed before you, God. We admit that we've sinned. We embrace the fact that we do make mistakes. We believe that we can be redeemed. And cancel culture creates a world where there is no forgiveness, where you can never admit that you did anything wrong, because then people will say, well, not only am I not going to forgive you, you just proved that you're every bit as bad a person as we said you were. So my wish for all of you is that as we read in the Machzor in the coming weeks, and we ask God, Slach lanu, machal lanu, kaper lanu, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement, that we may do that to our fellow men and women as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evan. And I think Evan's going to stick around for a little while after. I know there's so much to talk about. And to be honest, you really should you should get his book, and also you should check out the podcast with Rabbi Dan Levin, where they talk at great length. There's a lot more to this issue, as you heard, just this is sort of really just a beginning of looking at an important topic. So thank you, Evan, for bringing it to us. We really appreciate it.